I scored a perfect 800 on the math section of my SAT, and in this video, we're going to be doing a complete walkthrough of the official College Board Practice Test Number 1's first math module. So whether you've taken this test before and you want to see if you got your answers right, or if you haven't taken it before and you want to just pause the video at each question to try it yourself first, either way, hopefully this video can be helpful while you're preparing for your SAT. Okay, this first question says, what is 10% of 470? Now, we can really just rewrite 10% as 10 out of 100 because that's all that 10% is 10 out of 100. And then of is a keyword for multiply, and then 470 is just 470. So here we can see we're doing 10 over 100 times 470. Now if we kind of cancel out some of these zeros over here, we basically have a tenth of 470. So 470 over 10, once again, we cancel out a zero, 47 is our answer. Okay, now for question 2, we have 4x plus 6 equals 18, and the question says, which equation has the same solution as the given equation? Now we can see in all of the answers that they all have a 4x, which we can see in the original equation right here. So what that means is that we probably just want to try to isolate the 4x on one side. So all we're going to do is move this 6 over by subtracting it from both sides. So we have 4x equals 18 minus 6, and then this right side cancels out to 12. So 4x equals 12 is an equivalent expression, so it'll have the same solution. So our answer here is C. Okay, question number 3. The total cost in dollars to rent a surfboard consists of a $25 service fee and a $10 per hour rental fee. A person rents a surfboard for T hours and intends to spend a maximum of $75 to rent the surfboard. Which inequality represents this situation? Okay, so we can see that the $25 service fee is not contingent on the number of hours that they rent the surfboard. So that means that we're just going to have a plus 25 because, once again, it's not going to be contingent on the variable t because it'll be $25 whether we rent for 1 hour or whether we rent for 100 hours. So first off, we can get rid of B because they have the t next to the 25, which is incorrect. A is just missing the 25 altogether. C also has the 25 by the t. So just based off of that one fact, just the first number they give us, you can see that we can immediately get to our answer. We can tell that it has to be D, and D also makes sense if we just want to double check because we have the 10 hourly fee, $10 per hour fee attached to our variable t, which makes sense, and then we have less than or equal to 75 because the maximum we want to spend is 75, so we want the actual amount we pay, this left side, to be less than or equal to the 75. Okay. Moving on to question 4. The function g is defined by g of x equals x squared plus 9. For which value of x is g of x equal to 25? Okay, so we can see that we're just given a value of g of x, so we can replace the g of x up here with 25 and then figure out what x value will be a solution. So 25 equals x squared plus 9. Now you might immediately recognize this as a variation of a 3, 4, 5 triangle, like the Pythagorean theorem version of it. But in case you don't, we can move the 9 over. We'll have 25 minus 9 is 16 equals x squared. So x is going to equal plus or minus 4. And then the only option there is 4. Okay, question 5. Each face of a fair 14-sided die is labeled with a number from 1 through 14, with a different number appearing on each face. If the die is rolled one time, what is the probability of rolling a 2? So a probability is just going to be the number of what I call desired outcomes over the number of total or possible outcomes. So the number of desired outcomes is just the number of outcomes that would get us what we're looking for. So the number of desired outcomes here is just how many times or how many sides of the die have a 2 on them. So obviously if we have 14 sides and numbers 1 through 14 on all the sides, that means that only one of the sides is going to have a 2. So the number of desired is going to be 1, and then the total number of possibilities is basically how many sides are there on the die. So for this one, it's obviously just 14, so it's going to be 1 out of 14A. Okay, question 6. A printer produces posters at a constant rate of 42 posters per minute. So I'll write out the units. At what rate in posters per hour does the printer produce the posters? Okay, so we have it in posters per minute. We want to get it into some value, but for posters per hour. So how do we do that? Well, I want you to think of the units as almost a separate thing from the numbers. So We are in posters per minute. We want to go to posters per hour. I want you to think of that as just how you would think of any other fraction. So how do we get rid of what's on the bottom of a fraction? Well, we multiply it by the same thing on top. So if we multiply this posters per minute by a fraction where minutes are on the top, then the minutes on top and bottom will cancel out. Now, on the bottom, we want to add hours. So let's put minutes over hours. Now you can see that if we multiply this, including the units, times this new unit, that will cancel out the m's, add an hour on bottom, and will be in posters per hour. The problem is that 1 minute over 1 hour is not actually equal to 1. We can only multiply something by a fraction that equals 1 if we want to maintain its value. So we want to kind of just stick in some numbers that make this ratio actually equal to 1. So we know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So then when we multiply this, the actual value of this thing that we're multiplying by is just 1. So that means that we're not actually going to be changing the value of this, just the units. So then, now that we know that the units match up and cancel out, we have the m on bottom and top. Basically, we're multiplying by this to get here. We can see that when we multiply, the minutes on top and bottom cancel out, and then we'll have posters per hour. So now all we have to do is basically multiply these numbers. So we're going to have 42 times 60, which, let's see, 42 times 60. Of course, you'll have a calculator. I just don't have one on me right now. So it's going to be 120 and then 240. So 2520 is going to be our answer. And that is the unit in posters per hour. Okay, question 7. The function f is defined by the equation f of x equals 7x plus 2. What is the value of f of x when x equals 4? So all we're doing is just plugging in 4 for x. So we have 7 times 4 plus 2. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 2 is 30. So that's our answer for 7. Okay, question 8. A teacher is creating an assignment worth 70 points. The assignment will consist of questions worth 1 point and questions worth 3 points. Which equation represents this situation where x represents the number of 1-point questions and y represents the number of 3-point questions? Okay, so all we have to be careful of here is making sure that we stick the x next to the 1 and the y next to the 3. So we'll basically have 1x plus 3y, and that will give us the total number of points, which we got was 70. So this 1x is just x plus 3y equals 70, and so we can see that that one is going to be D. Okay, question 9. Right triangles LMN and PQR are similar, meaning they have the same corresponding angles but not side lengths, where L and M correspond to P and Q respectively. So we have L and M corresponding to P and Q. That makes sense. Just visually, those are the first two of each. Angle M has a measure of 53 degrees. What is the measure of angle Q? Okay, so we can see that if L and M correspond to P and Q, then we can also say that L corresponds to P and M corresponds to Q. So basically what that means is, if I were to just draw this out for you really quick, obviously they're not the same size, but they do have the same angles. So we have L, M, N, and P, Q, R. So they tell us L and M correspond to P and Q. So that means this side basically corresponds to this side. So that means that this angle corresponds to this angle. So if angle M is 53 degrees, angle Q is also 53 degrees. So the answer is going to be B. Okay, question 10. The solution to the given system of equations is x comma y. What is the value of x? Okay, so we have a system up here. What I would recommend when you see a system of equations is simply plug it into Desmos, but obviously we can't do that right here because I don't have Desmos open. So I'll show you how to solve this very quickly. So we're looking for the value of x. What you want to do when you're looking for the value of one of the variables is actually isolate one of the equations for the other one. So if we're looking for the value of x, we isolate for y. We can see they already did that for us here. So we have y equals negative 3x. And then once you have it isolated for the other variable, you plug that in for every instance of the variable that you just isolated for in the other equation. So we'll have 4x plus, and then instead of y, we're plugging in the negative 3x equals 15. And then what you see happens here is we'll end up just getting a solution for the other variable. So we isolated for y, but when we plug that in, it will actually give us the solution for x. And we're looking for the value of x, so that works out. Okay, so 4x minus 3x is just x. X equals 15, that's our answer. Okay, question 11. Which of the following equations is the most appropriate linear model for the data shown in the scatter plot? Two things you want to look at here. It's a negative slope, so the coefficient in front of our x needs to be negative, like a or b, so c and d are wrong. And then the y-intercept is a positive 10, so it's not going to be minus 10, not going to be a, so our answer is b. Okay, question 12. The graph of y equals f of x is shown where the function f is defined by f of x equals ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, and a, b, c, and d are constants. For how many values of x does f of x equal 0? Well, they told us that f of x is just y, so we're basically looking how many times does y equal 0? Well, we have y equals 0 right here, y equals 0 right here, and y equals 0 right here, so 3 times. All of this a, b, c, d stuff is kind of just to throw you off here. You don't really need it for that question. Okay, Vivian bought party hats and cupcakes for $71. Each package of party hats costs $3 and each cupcake costs $1. If Vivian bought 10 packages of party hats, how many cupcakes did she buy? Okay, well, we know that the party hats, let's see, each package of party hats is $3. She bought 10, so 10 times 3 gives us $30 that she spent on the party hats. And that means that for the cupcakes, she has to have spent the remaining $41. And so we know that she spent $41 on cupcakes, but each cupcake cost $1, so that means that she also just bought 41 cupcakes. So our answer is 41. Okay, 14. What is one of the solutions to the given equation? All right, let's see. So the basic way to factor this is to find two numbers that multiply to this and add to this. So we can see that's going to be negative 12 and 2. If you can't immediately recognize that, that's okay. You can also solve this with Desmos pretty much instantly. But that just means that we're going to have x minus 12, or actually, sorry, x plus 12 and x minus 2. Now the reason that I know that it's plus 12 is because we basically want it to be, when we add these up, they'll get this basically b value, or the middle in front of the like z to the 1 power term. So we know that we want a plus 12 and a minus 2 to add up to positive 10. So the solutions for this are going to be x equals negative 12 and x equals 2. So either of those would work. You could answer either of these and they'd be correct. Just make sure that you're setting x plus 12 equal to 0. And so you actually get x equals negative 12, like I did here. You don't want to just see x plus 12 and then say, oh, 12 is the solution. No, you want the solution for x to where this term cancels out to 0. Okay, question 15. Bacteria are growing in liquid growth medium. There were 300,000 cells per milliliter during an initial observation. The number of cells per milliliter doubles every 3 hours. How many cells per milliliter will there be 15 hours after the initial observation? So it doubles every 3 hours. So after 15 hours, we should have had 5 doubles, right? Because every 3 hours we double. So we would double once after 3, then again after 6, then 9, 12, and 15. So that's 5 total doubles. So that means that we want basically just 300,000 times, let's see, if we multiplied it by 2, that would be a double. Then if we doubled it again, it would be basically times 4. So basically you can see that we just want 2 to the power of 5. So 2 to the power of 5 is just going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So once again, you could just plug this into Desmos when you have it, but I'm just showing you how to do it without a calculator. So 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, then we have a 2. So 4 times 4 is 16, 16 times 2 is 32. So 2 to the 5th is 32. And then we can see that when we multiply 32 times 300,000, if we just look at the units that actually matter, like the 3 and the 32, we can see that that would be something to do with 96. So if we see 96 pop up multiple times, we have to figure out how many zeros there are. But you can see that the only one that actually has the 96 in it is D. So that's going to be our answer. Okay, question 16. Which expression is equivalent to 6x to the 8th y to the squared plus 12x squared y squared? Okay, so we're just going to be looking for the greatest common factor we can pull out. And the way that you want to think about this is you want to look at the numbers, then at the x, and then at the y. So for the numbers, we have 6 and 12. So obviously the biggest thing we can pull out is a 6. Then for the x's, biggest thing we can pull out is x squared. And for y, the biggest thing we can pull out is y squared. So that is what we're pulling out. Now let's go back and figure out what each of these terms would be once we pull this out. So when we pull out a 6, the 6 just goes away, basically becomes a 1. X to the 8th, when we pull out an x squared, it becomes x to the 6th. And then y squared, when we pull out a y squared, just also becomes a 1. So this is all that's left of the first one. Then we're going to have a plus, because we see that here. When we pull a 6 out of a 12, we're left with a 2. And then when we pull out x squared, y squared, that x squared, y squared just basically goes to a 1. So this is going to be our answer, and we can see, let's see, this one's wrong, this one's wrong. We want x to the 6th, so it's going to be C. Okay, question 17. A neighborhood consists of a 2-hectare park and 35-hectare residential area. The total number of trees in the neighborhood is 3,934. The equation 2x plus 35y equals 3,934 represents the situation. Which of the following is the best interpretation of x? So we can see that x is next to the 2, and we were told that a neighborhood consists of a 2-hectare park. So it's going to have something to do with the park, I guess. So we know that it's not going to be about the residential area, so it's not going to be B or D. And then, let's see, the two options are the total number of trees in the park, the average number of trees per hectare. We can see that it's going to be A, because we want to multiply the average number per hectare by the number of hectares, which is 2. We don't want to multiply the total number of trees by the number of hectares. That wouldn't make sense, because it's basically like if we had 3 square miles, right? 3 square miles, and then each square mile had an average of 5 trees, then to get the total number of trees, which 3,934 that they tell us is the total number, we want to multiply that by the average per square mile. So we would do like 5 by 3 here, so we would get that there are like 15 total trees in this area, and we're just applying the same reasoning up here, but with 2 hectares, which I don't know what a hectare is, but it's some sort of area, and then we're multiplying that by x, which is the average number of trees per hectare. Okay, question 18. Sorry, it's a little bit cut off there for some reason. The graph shows the relationship between the number of shares of stock from company A, X, and the number of shares from stock company B, Y, that Simone can purchase. Which equation could represent this relationship? Okay, so all of this context doesn't really matter. We're just trying to graph this or express it as an equation. So let's see, when we are at y equals 0, we should get a value of 60 for x. So let's check which one of those works. If we plug in a 60 here, y is not going to equal 0. If we plug in a 60 here, let's see, that would be 480. And so if a 0 was here, 480 equals 480. That one checks out. If we plug in a 60 for x here, y would not equal 0. If we plugged in a 60 here, y would not equal 0. So we can see immediately the answer is B. Another way that you could approach this, if you didn't really understand what I just did there, I was basically just plugging in the point 60, 0, and B was the only one where it was actually true. But another way you could figure this out is write this in the y equals mx plus b form, which would be pretty easy to figure out, and then just rearrange it into standard form with the ax plus by equals c form, and then just see which one matches. I'm sure that you'd find it would also be B. Okay, question 19. Circle A has a radius of 3n and circle B has a radius of 129n, where n is a positive constant. The area of circle B is how many times the area of circle A? Okay, so circle A, if we express the area as pi r squared, then we can see that for circle A, okay, that's funny, I wrote the A for area, but let's call it area of A. That's going to be pi times, the radius is 3n, so it's going to be times 3n squared, which simplifies to, we have to square the 3 and the n, so it's going to be 9 pi n squared. And then the area of B is going to be pi times 129 n squared. And so we can see that's going to simplify to something very big, whatever 129 squared is, times pi n squared. So let's see, 129 squared, that's going to give us 81. 18 plus 8 is 26. Then that's going to give us 11, 0, 8, it's going to be 18, it's going to be 5, 2, 2 zeros, and then 9, 2, 1. Of course, this is just because I don't have a calculator. You can definitely do this in your calculator on your real test. So 9, 10, 11, 16, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. So, sorry, that's not the right placement for the comma. So 129 squared is going to be 16,000. So let's see, if we divide that by 9, that would make sense. It would be about D. So we're trying to figure out how many times the area is for B. So we're basically figuring out what this over 9 is. So that makes sense. That would probably be close to 1849. Once again, when you have a calculator, it'll probably be a lot easier to actually check. Okay, the frequency table summarizes the 57 data values in a data set. What is the maximum data value? So that means that we're literally just looking at the maximum data value. So these are the data values. The maximum we can see is 14. So that's our answer. 21, a circle in the xy plane has a diameter with endpoints 2, 4 and 2, 14. So that means, let's see, x is going to be at 1, 2, and then we're going to be at 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to be basically up here at y equals 14. So it's going to look something like that. An equation of this circle is x minus 2 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals r squared, where r is a positive constant. What is the value of r? Okay, so we know that these are the endpoints. So given this circle equation, we know that the center is going to be at 2, 9. And so we're just trying to figure out what the radius is. So that just basically means if we were at y equals 9, how far down do we have to go to get to this bottom endpoint, which is at 4, and then we should try to travel the equal distance up to get to 14. So let's see, what's the difference from 4 to 9? That's 5, and then that also makes sense because if you go 5 up from 9, you end up at 14, so the radius is going to be 5. Okay, question 22. The measure of angle r is 2 pi over 3 radians. The measure of angle t is 5 pi over 12 radians greater than the measure of angle r. What is the measure of angle t in degrees? So all we're doing here is converting from radians to degrees. So the way that you do that, the way that you can remember if you frequently forget, is just remember that 360 degrees, I'll just call it d, equals 2 pi radians, right? So if we have 2 pi over 3 radians plus 5 pi over 12, that will be 2 pi over 3 plus 5 pi over 12. Let's get this one over 12 so we can actually add these. Multiply top and bottom by 4. So we'll basically just have 8 twelfths pi. So 8 pi plus 5 pi is going to give us 13 pi over 12. And then we're trying to convert that to radians, or sorry, that is radians, we're trying to convert that to degrees. So we have 13 pi over 12 radians, right? And then we're trying to get to degrees. So once again, we can actually throw this one on bottom here. So if we pull this down here, 2 pi radians, since these, the bottom and top are equal, that means that this thing equals 1, right? Because we just proved that they're equal. So if we put it on bottom, that's basically just like having 5 over 5. You know, if they're equal, the fraction's always going to equal 1. So if we multiply this by 360 degrees in 2 pi radians, the radians cancel out, we'll have a unit of degrees, and now we just have to deal with the numbers. So pi on top and bottom cancels out. We have 13 times 360 over 24. So let's see, there's probably just going to be a lot of simplification. Once again, just do this in your calculator and save some time. But if we divide top and bottom by 6, this 360 becomes a 60. So 13 times 60, and then 24 divided by 6 is 4. You can divide the top and bottom by 2. So 13 times 30 over 2, and then we can do that one more time. So 13 times 15 over 1. So we're just going to have 13 times 15, which I should probably know what that is off the top of my head, but I don't. So let's see, that's going to be 65, 3, 1 plus. So 195, so our answer is going to be C. Okay, 23. A certain town has an area of 4.36 square miles. What is the area in square yards of this town? So this is a little bit of a trickier units problem. We have 4.36 miles, I'll just do mi, squared, right? Because it's square miles. So the unit isn't miles, it's miles squared. And we're trying to get this into square yards. So once again, we're going to do the same deal, multiplying by a fraction. So we know that 1 mile equals 1760 yards. So obviously we want the 1 mile to be on bottom to cancel out some of these. And then we have 1760 yards. But you'll see what happens here is when we cancel out this mile with the mile squared on top, that is basically doing like x squared over x, which doesn't completely simplify this x squared on top. It basically just becomes x over 1. So this is only going to get rid of the squared property of the miles, because miles squared is basically miles times miles. So we're basically just getting rid of one of them, but we still have miles up here. And also that is good news because we want the area in square yards, not just yards. So you can see we want to do this again, because then we'll end up with yards times yards as the unit, which is what we want because square yards is just yard times yard. And then we do one more mile on bottom to get rid of this. And then the only unit left is yard squared. And then we just deal with the numbers. I'm just going to tell you when you plug this in, it's going to give you D, because we basically have 1760 squared times 4.36. And so 1760 squared is going to be a very large number. So it's going to be D here. Okay, 24, for line H, the table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y. Line K is the result of translating line H down 5 units in the xy plane. What is the x-intercept of line K? So the x-intercept is basically when we pass through the x-axis. So it's going to be when y equals 0. So what we're going to try to do here is get this in point slope form, which is going to be y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So the y and the x are just our variables. The slope we can figure out by saying, okay, well the increase in x here is 5, going from 18 to 23, and then the increase in y here is 30, because we're going from 130 to 160. So the slope is just the rise over the run. So this is the rise, and then this is the run. So the slope is 30 over 5, which is just 6. So we plug in a 6 for the m, and then for the point, we can just plug in any point. So let's choose, 18, 130. So we'll plug in an 18 for x1, and then 130 for y1. So we have y minus 130 equals 6 times x minus 18. And so once again, we're looking for the x-intercept, which is when y equals 0. So we basically just plug in a 0 here. We have negative 130 equals 6 times x minus 18. And so let's see, we already know for sure that the y is going to be 0. That's this part. But now we actually have to figure out what the x value will be. So if we divide both sides by 6, we'll get negative 130 over 6 equals x minus 18. Then let's just add 18 to both sides. So x equals negative 130 over 6 plus 18. So to get, let's see, 130 over 6, we can cancel out a 2. So let's do negative 65 over 3. And then let's get the 18 to be over 3. So 18 times 3. Let's see, that would be 30 plus 24. So 54 over 3. So this is the value, but we need to actually simplify it a little bit. So negative 65 plus 54 is going to be negative 11 over 3. So that's going to give us C. Okay, let me erase some of this stuff so that when we get to 25, we can actually write on the paper over here. Okay, so actually that was 24, so now we're just going over to 25. Okay, 25 says, in the xy plane, the graph of the equation y equals negative x squared plus 9x minus 100 intersects the line y equals c at exactly 1 point. What is the value of c? Okay, so if we have the line y equals c, that basically just means that we're going to be at a height of y, right? Because this is x and this is y. So it just means that we're going to have a constant height. So like say that this is the value of c, the line would just be this. But what you'll notice is that no matter how high or low this is, it's always going to be a straight line straight across, right? So that means that it's always going to be horizontal. So if our other graph is a parabola and they only intersect at 1 point, that means that we're going to have, it's basically only touching at the vertex like that. And I know that it's upside down because this is a negative a value. It's negative x squared, so I know that it's down. So I know that the interaction is going to look like this. Now, how do you find the vertex? Well, the vertex is just negative b over 2a. So the b here is 9. So we'll have negative 9 over 2a, and we can see that a is negative 1. So this is just going to be -2. And so this is going to be the x coordinate of our vertex, which of course it'll just simplify to 9/2. And so to find the y coordinate of our vertex, we're just going to plug it into this equation. So this is our x, so let's go ahead and plug it in. Y equals -9/2 squared plus 9 times 9/2 minus 100. So we can see that this is going to become -81/4 plus 81/2 minus 100. So let's see, let's get everything over 4 just to make it simpler. So we'll have -81 plus, we need to double this top, so plus 162 minus 100 all over 4, or sorry, that 100 actually needs to become 400 because we're putting it over 4. So this is the solution. We just need to simplify this. And so let's see, -81 plus 162, that would just give us +81. So we'll have 81 minus 400 over 4. So let's see, 81 minus 400, that would just be 319 over 4, and then it's going to be negative. So -319 over 4, C is our answer. Okay, question 26. For each real number r, which of the following points lies on the graph of each equation in the xy plane for the given system? Okay, so we can see one of these is solved for y, and the other two are solved for x, and then this one is going to be harder, so let's just not try A until the end if all the other ones are wrong. So let's try C and D first. So we can see that they're saying for each real number r. So that just basically means that r is like our x over here. So if we plug in r for x, we should get one of these as our output for y. So let's plug in an r for x for this first one, 2r plus 3y equals 7, and then let's solve for y and see if we get either of these things right here. So let's see, we're solving for y, sorry. So we'll have 3y equals 7, subtract 2r from both sides, and then divide by 3. So y equals 7/3 minus 2/3 r. So is that an answer? 7/3 minus 2/3 r. That's not the answer for C and D. So now we have to check for B. Here, r is our y, so we're going to plug in r for y, right, because we have our x comma y value like this. And so if the r is in the second place, then r is our y. So we'll plug that in, 2x plus 3r equals 7. Rearrange to solve for x and see if this matches. So we'll have 2x equals 7 minus 3r. Divide everything by 2. X equals 7/2 minus 3/2 r. And we can see that is the same thing here. They just flipped the order. They basically just have -3/2 r plus 7/2, so B is going to be our answer. Okay, the perimeter of an equilateral triangle is 624 centimeters. So perimeter equals 624, and we have an equilateral triangle, meaning all the sides are the same length. The height of this triangle is k√3. So the height is k√3, where k is a constant. What is the value of k? So, okay, we know that the perimeter is 624, and we know that it's equilateral. So that means that all of the side lengths are going to be exactly 1/3 of 624. So you could just plug in 624 divided by 3 into Desmos, but let's see, that would give us 208. So all of the sides are having a length of 208. And now to get this height, we need to get the actual height so that we can set it equal to k√3 and then just solve for k. So what we're going to do is pull out one of these right triangles, because we know that this length is 208. That's that side right there. We know that the height is k√3, and then we know that the bottom is going to be half of 208. So the bottom is 104. So we know that 104 squared plus k√3 altogether squared equals 208 squared. Okay, now for this one, I'm definitely going to pull out a calculator because I don't want to do this in my head. So 208 squared minus 104 squared is going to equal k√3 squared, which, okay, once we do that, it's just going to be k squared times 3. So let's just do this. Let's simplify for k. So we'll have it over 3. That'll get rid of that. And then the square root will get rid of that. So k is going to equal the square root of 208 squared minus 104 squared over 3. So I'll be back in a second. I'm going to plug that into a calculator and see what I get. Okay, so the value I got there was 104. So that is going to be our answer for K.